Here are my top 5 things I feel you should be doing the minute you start thinking about going to Hajj. Assalamu alaikum, Elena here, the Muslim Travel Girl, and today I am so excited to kickstart my Hajj series, sharing with you what I personally think you need to do in order to prepare for an awesome Hajj. Alhamdulillah, I completed my Hajj in 2023 and I'm really excited to share my knowledge with you, inshallah. So without further ado, let's get started. As I mentioned earlier, I did my Hajj in 2023. Alhamdulillah, I completed it. I have done so many Umrah, but Hajj was one of those things that actually I didn't know I was ready to do. And subhanAllah, like if Allah invites you, you just have to take the invitation. But here are the top things that I feel really helped me make most of Hajj that don't have anything to do with like the Islamic knowledge of it. As you know, Hajj is once in a lifetime experience, super expensive. You want to make the most of it, but also you want to enjoy this experience because number one, it's very emotional, and number two, it's very tiring. And I always said, oh, I'm going to do it later in life, but I'm kind of glad I did it now because alhamdulillah, I'm young, I'm healthy. I still have the physical options available to me to actually make it a memorable Hajj. You have decided that you want to go for Hajj, whether it is in 2024 or 2025. Inshallah, I hope that this video will be beneficial for you no matter when you want to go for Hajj. So with regards to how you book Hajj, this is through Nusuk and it's a very different process than what it used to be. I actually didn't do any of that. My husband did majority of it. We also, as a side note, did this Hajj from Saudi Arabia. So my husband works in Saudi Arabia. I have residence in Saudi Arabia, and we actually did this Hajj as locals and only for 5 days. So these are the 5 days of Hajj. So I'm going to be talking to you about the actual rituals of Hajj. So I went into the country for 5 days and I got out of the country literally on the 5th day. Because my daughter stayed in the UK with family, we did not take her with us. And I'm gonna do another Q&A on this because I got so many questions with regards to Hajj that I'm going to be answering in another video since this is a Hajj series and you will find them in the playlist, inshallah. So without further ado, let's get started on the top 5 things I feel you really need to do to kind of maximize your Hajj and start before you even go for Hajj. My number one, and I think it's pretty obvious, it's start walking. And I am not talking about 5,000 steps a day walking. I'm talking about 10 and 20,000 steps a day walking because, oh boy, there is a lot of walking. I mean, there is a lot of walking on Umrah. On Umrah, while I'm during Mecca and Medina, the distances are so vast that you can easily do 5,000 steps just going from your hotel to the Haram, even if you're in a 5-star hotel near the Haram. So just keep this in mind when you start preparing for Hajj, because the one thing that can really help you and make your Hajj more enjoyable is actually exercising properly and doing more steps. And when I'm not talking about physical exercise, although that helps, it's about walking. There were days that we did 50 and 60,000 steps. That's like 20 and 30 kilometers. And there were days that our minimum count was like 20,000 steps. And this is the minimum count, right? It is not anything extra rather than your Mina camp to Jamarat and back, depending on when where your camp is. So it's very important to start walking. Potentially one thing I would suggest if it's cold, although now Hajj is in the springtime, summer, springtime, so it will be okay for you to walk outside. But if you didn't have the time to walk and you wanted to walk, just buy yourself a walking pad from Amazon or whatever, and just start walking while you're watching television or while you're listening to a podcast, just to get those steps up. I, for the past 2 years, have lost a lot of weight. I've lost approximately 27 kgs. And one of the things that I know for a fact is that if I was my original weight when I went for Hajj, I would struggle because I could not walk that far. And when you have that physical exhaustion from you walking, you are not enjoying the process. Like your du'as are not gonna really be the same. Your emotional state is not really gonna be the same. And that's why for me, you know, being physically active and walking I feel is so important, because it made everything else so much easier. And subhanAllah, I really feel sorry for all the elderlies and all the children, because it is hard. It is hard emotionally, but it's also hard physically, just due to the stamp. And so start building your stamina. You know, if you have the ability to walk more, walk outside. If not, just get yourself a walking pad, inshallah. For me, this one was a big one. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it was more of, I always wanted to delay it and be like, oh, I'll do it when I'm older. And I'll do it when I'm older. So then, you know, I have more sins forgiven type of thing. But I felt that I would never be ready. So we had the chance to do 2022. We had friends from Saudi who went in 2022, which was like 100,000 people went then. And it would have been so much quieter if we did. And I kept telling my husband, oh, I don't feel ready. I don't want to go. And then when 2023 came and he's like, shall we go for Hajj? Because he had already been for Hajj once. He wanted to do Hajj with me. I said, oh, I'm not ready. Maybe we'll go next year. And this kept going in my head. It's like, oh, I'm not worthy, or I'm not deserving, or I'm not ready. And it's all these thoughts in your head. But then he was like, well, if we find a spot, we are going for Hajj. And I'm like, halas, like if we find a spot, that means Allah invited us, so we are going for Hajj. But I always felt that if you have this doubt that, oh, you're not good enough to go for Hajj, then you should definitely apply. If you have obviously the financial means to do it, and you have that sin planted, inshallah, because the only person who can invite you is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if he wants you there, he will find a way for you to get there. We found package in the last minute. We were searching, and I don't know what happened. There were some cancellations, but we found a package at the last minute. And I feel it was because I kind of debated with myself, am I ready, am I not? And then I said, okay, if we find a package, we are going. And that was kind of like my invitation, or call it manifestation, whatever it is. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one can invite you. And I don't feel you will ever be 100% ready. If you have doubts, still apply for the package. Number 3 for me is research as much as possible about the rituals, but don't overwhelm yourself in a way. So one of the things for me, it was, and I guess this is for first time Umrahs as well, and I do have a video about Umrah and the things that you should know before going for Umrah. And since Hajj actually has Umrah in it, I would recommend you checking out that video as well about things you must know before going for Hajj. But search the rituals. For me, one of the things that was stopping me from doing Hajj is, number 1, because I thought it's very intense in terms of rituals. And I was like, I don't want to make a mistake. Hajj is once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm a perfectionist. What if I mess something up? So number 1 on this is search as much as possible about the rituals. There are so many YouTube videos out there that are animated, that makes it super easy to kind of cover the history of what you're doing, as well as the rituals or what you're saying, things like that, to make that process of the actual Hajj rituals easier for you. So you basically know what happens every single day. However, having said that, the rituals of Hajj are not that many. Yes, you have to go to Arafah. Yes, you have to go to Muzdalifah. But other than those things, they're like, you can make du'as, but they're not like in Umrah, you have to do the tawaf and then sa'i, and you have to pray 2 rak'ah. These are parts of the Umrah rituals that you know, but also you have sheikh there that can navigate you. You also had those kiosks where you would have imams and sheikh that you can ask questions about. Alhamdulillah, my husband had a friend who was an imam, and he kind of navigated us, because one of the days actually I got sick, so I couldn't do the stoning, and my husband had to do the stoning for me, which was acceptable. But again, I was like, I don't want to miss a ritual. So there are different stages of rituals that you have to do yourself, and then others that you can pay for them, like you can pay a fidya, or somebody else can do it on your name, like my husband did for one of my Jamarat, because I got really sick and there was no way I could have gone. I would have probably ended up in hospital if I did. But getting to know those rituals just makes you more sure about every step. And if you don't know the rituals, then there is someone there, don't worry, that will know the rituals for you. And also another thing I noticed with Hajj is there is a lot of waiting. I didn't know that until I went for Hajj. I honestly thought, and I guess the same with Umrah, people think that it takes very long time and everything is go, 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 go. But in reality, there is a lot of waiting. There is a lot of spare time where you can make dua, where you can actually watch a YouTube video of what's the next ritual about. So it is not as stressful in terms of rituals, or in terms of, depends like of anything really, that you cannot navigate. But for me, it was one of those things where I prepared as much possible. I watched a lot of videos. I watched a lot of videos from Shukh and their advice, and hopefully you're watching this video, and also I'm sure you're gonna watch many more videos. So just to kind of like prepare spiritually and what to expect. But again, there is nothing that you cannot manage during your Hajj. Number 4 is write down your dua list. For me, this one very important, because as we talked about the rituals further up, the rituals are important, but one of the rituals is actually Arafat Day. And on Arafat Day, the only thing you do is make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I wrote down my dua list of everything I wanted to achieve, like my goals, all my desires that were literally for this life, inshallah, and the akhirah. And I wrote every single thing down. I think I had like hundreds of duas. But I watched Muhammad al-Sharif's videos that helped me a lot. He has a lot of gems of how to raise your duas. And I just followed kind of like his guidance. So I would highly recommend you checking out his videos. I'm going to leave a link in the description below for you. And also I'm going to leave a link in the description below of my article where I have all the links anyways included. But writing down your duas before going for Hajj, for me, it was really, really important. And I highly recommend you do exactly the same thing, because while you are there, you don't have the mental capacity to actually come up with super amazing duas. And that's okay if you don't want like super amazing duas, but of course, personally for me, in personal development and in like raising my duas and asking Allah for anything, like on Arafat Day, you can ask literally for anything. So make the dua count, you know? And another thing, on Arafat Day and throughout Hajj, obviously, like you make dua throughout Hajj, it doesn't stop. But while you have them there, it's so much easier to actually read them out than having to think about your duas. Of course, you can probably remember your top 10 duas, but if you have like some small nuisance duas that you have that are harder to remember, I wrote them down on a piece of paper and I wrote them down on my Chromebook, and I literally took my Chromebook with me and I was like reading them out loud. One of the things I like doing is creating a life wheel and then creating duas based on that life wheel and different segments of my life. If this is something you want to learn more about, I'm happy to do another video. Let me know in the comments below and I can make a video of that. But make your dua list. And another tip, on Arafat Day, do not talk to anyone. I'm being serious, like don't talk to people. Because on Arafat, you have from Dhuhr to Maghrib, which is like the time to make dua, whether you stay in your tent or you go out in Mount Arafat. But people were talking to each other in that blessed time. And I was like, just don't talk. Just keep making dua. Keep making dua. Keep asking Allah. This is what Hajj is like. Hajj without Arafat is not there. So this applies to everything else, but obviously Arafat is super important. So make up your dua list. Very, very important for me. Number 5 is have no expectations. I feel this is really, 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 really important. So personal experience, as I mentioned at the beginning, I actually didn't know what package my husband bought. I knew I wanted the best package I can afford. Alhamdulillah, we went from Saudi, so we didn't have to pay the full price. However, we paid the same price that somebody else from the UK would have paid if we stayed 3 weeks or 2 weeks, for example. We only stayed 5 days, and literally this was the most expensive holiday I've had, to pay for. But again, I wanted the best I could afford. One of the reasons why we said, oh, let's take the job in Saudi Arabia was so we can do Hajj and Umrah. Alhamdulillah, we managed to do it. But again, I had no idea what I was gonna expect. And I went with zero expectations. I went with the expectation that I'm gonna live on the street. And I kid you not. I went with the expectation that although I paid for a VIP package or the luxury package, I'm gonna be sleeping on the streets. Because, and I read that through forums and things, was no matter how much money you've paid for a package, you never know what's gonna happen. And while I was at Hajj on social media, a lot of people who were on Hajj with me, like obviously I didn't know them because they're millions, but like people messaged me and said, I had this horrible experience. People had no camps, like they had no beds in their camps that they paid for. They had to stay on the streets. SubhanAllah, like there were so many bad like experiences or tour operators that did really bad things, which Allah inshallah will deal with them. But again, I had no expectations and I expected something like this to happen to me. And I had no expectations of my camp. And another example is when we actually found out the camp, I didn't know that we can pick the camp. My husband picked our camp. But on the pictures of Nusuk, once you have accepted your Hajj and your camp is available there, they had photos. These photos actually did not represent the camp we stayed in. It was of a similar standard, but they didn't represent the actual picture with the real life camp we went to. And that's why I'm saying have different expectations. I had friends who went for Hajj before, and because I prepared so, like, in some ways I went over prepared and in other ways I did under prepared. For example, my camp was with a lot of Arabs and they had like these huge suitcases with like 5 different tops and, you know, like dresses each day, especially the women, because obviously I was in the women's section. And I went with like a hand luggage and a backpack with like 5 dresses because I asked people around me and they were like, oh, you're not gonna sleep, you don't need pajamas, or, you know, you don't need this because you're not gonna have any time. I also feel that your expectations and your tolerance really depends on your personal circumstances. I had girls in my camp that were local Saudis, bless them, and other Arab women who were not used to roughing it out in a way, who were not used to the crowds, to the pushing, to, you know, the whole Hajj experience. And they really struggled with the toilets, with the camp, like with everything. Where I am a very resilient person, I had no expectations of anything. Like I expect like toilet as a whole on the ground and that's about it. And literally to sleep pretty much on the streets. So I was prepared for, you know, the lowest of the low. And then I went and I was like, oh wow, this is luxury. Where other people, because they paid for a VIP package or for a luxury package, they were like, this is no luxury. What is this? This is horrible. Like, and they found problems with everything. So it really, really like depends on how you, like, you know, what you expect. And no matter how much money you have paid, seriously, don't expect luxury. Like my camp for me was luxurious because I expected like cockroach infested place basically. Where for somebody with the expectation of a 5-star Umrah, they expected 5-star and then they got disappointed. So manage your expectations very, very carefully. And I feel like you will have a very happy and, you know, successful Hajj in terms of accommodation and everything. Because also your camp in Mina depends on where are you located, of like your nationality. Some nationalities are closer to like Jamarat, for example, some nationality are further away. So it really depends. And of course, again, you have different packages. You had like a 5-star, 3-star, 4-star, 3-star package, and then a 2-star package, which is like the cheapest. We obviously went for the highest package. I think there was a package that was VVIP on the top, but that was all sold out because Mina has a hotel. Not many people know that, but Mina has hotel towers, which are next to Jamarat. But when we went, that's what we wanted. Unfortunately, it was fully booked by some royals. And there were quite a few royals because I did see them with like security guards and things like that. But yeah, we didn't have that option. We basically just went for the most luxurious package. I don't even know what that package was. But we did pay a higher part and a premium for the package, alhamdulillah. And again, if you can't afford it, I do recommend paying for it. But if you can't afford it, then just manage your expectations. But in both cases, just manage your expectations. You know, just that's all I'm going to say. I feel like your Hajj really depends on you, your circumstances, your understanding of Hajj, your understanding of how Hajj is going to work for you. If you take everything with a pinch of salt, if you take everything in stride, then your Hajj is going to be successful. If you prepare yourself with the tips I gave you, I feel your Hajj is going to be successful. Everything is about mental and physical tests, and everybody's going to be tested differently. I was tested not with my accommodation. I really thought I'm going to be tested actually with my accommodation. But in reality, I was tested with my daughter being at home by herself, crying for her mommy because her mommy and her daddy left and she stayed with grandma. And she wasn't used to stay for a whole week with grandma by herself. And I was in my tent watching at the camera and crying. And I was like, okay, like I expected Allah to test me with like toilets and camp, which he did test me with toilets. But he didn't test me, like he tested me more with my daughter being away from me. So everybody's going to be tested, but it's going to be tested differently. And because a lot of people commented while I was posting on my Hajj stories, and you can find those on Instagram, they were like, that's luxury. Yes, it is luxury, but also I have no shame of the fact that I took steps in my life and decisions to be able to afford that luxury Hajj package. Whether it is because I saved money, I didn't steal my money, or whether we moved to a country like Saudi to be able to afford a better Hajj package, for less money. Well, in reality, it wasn't for less money because we only went for those 5 days. But yeah, so inshallah, in summary, my 5 tips are: start walking very, very, very soon. Like if you are planning to go for Hajj, start walking now. Second, you'll never be ready until you're ready. So apply for the Hajj if you really want to go. Make sure you familiarize yourself with all the rituals there's so many videos, and don't worry if you don't remember everything. There will be shuk around there will be kiosks, there will be people who can actually guide you, inshallah, to maximize it. And if you are going with a group, which we actually didn't, like we didn't have a sheikh with us in a group. I know a lot of the other groups that came from abroad had a sheikh that you can ask. We didn't have that. So, we actually had to have one at home to ask, but you will have someone to ask around there, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Number 4, make your dua list. This, I feel, will be super important because then you can have every single dua that you want and keep repeating those same duas. There is no shame in opening up your piece of paper, your notebook, your phone, anywhere you've saved them, and just start reading from there. And keep your intention, obviously, and everything else, but just read them. And, it doesn't matter how many duas you have, just keep making them. So you don't forget a dua, because this is the perfect time to make duas. And number 5 is keep your expectations low. I really feel this is like super important, because no matter how much money you've paid, no matter what package you go from what country you go, if you keep your expectations low, then everything you get good is a bonus, and it will keep your spirit up and high, because you definitely don't want to be going for Hajj and grumping about the toilets, the dirt, the camp, the people, and everything else. It kind of brings your energy down. You want to be able to actually, uplift and have this spiritual uplift that you have from Hajj, inshallah. These are my 5 things that you should be doing before going for Hajj, and start thinking about them. If you have questions that you want specific answer about Hajj, please drop them in the comments below, because this is going to be my Hajj series in preparation for Hajj this year, and inshallah every other year. If you like this video, like and subscribe, leave your comments below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.